Hey cruisers, welcome back to Byte Size Cruises. My name is John. Today we are going to give you some amazing tips for cruising to Alaska. If you've thought about going to Alaska, it is certainly a bucket list trip. It is a breathtaking experience. Today we're going to help you make the most of your journey. We have the most essential tips that we found all over the internet by going to Alaska, by talking to other cruisers, by talking to other travel advisors. We've compiled a list of our essential cruise tips for Alaska. Let's get into them. Hey everyone, first things first. Timing is everything with Alaska. The Alaska cruise season runs from May to October. If you're looking for the best weather possible, aim for June, July, or August. These are the peak months with the longest days and the warmest temperatures, but remember, peak season means peak crowds as well, so there is a little bit of a trade-off there. If you go early or late in the season, it's considered shoulder season. It will certainly be less crowded there, but the weather may be a little more unstable. However, it does rain 300 days a year in the Alaska region, so you are going to see probably some type of inclement weather, but we will make sure you are as prepared as humanly possible for that. Let's get into our tips. Tip number one, book as early as possible. So here's what happens. You will not only snag better prices, but you're also going to get first dibs on excursions. Trust me, excursions in Alaska sell out fast. Excursions everywhere now sell out fast. There's much more availability for excursions. It's much easier to book them. It's much easier to see them. People are much more proactive than they've ever been before in cruising. So please book early. The earlier you book, the better, especially for your cruise. As you get closer and closer, the prices do not go down, they go up. We are a year out from 2025 now, and prices are already going up and up. 2026 is beginning to be announced slightly for the Alaska season, and those are going to start selling quick as well. Cruise ships are putting more and more ships in Alaska, but that is not going to last long, as a lot of Alaskan towns do not want to over-tourist the areas. So we're at a point where we're going to be hitting max capacity there, and we can't really increase the size of the ships. So make sure you book early to get the best deals possible. Tip number two, Alaska can be a little bit tricky. So our tip here is use a travel agent, not just because we're travel agents, which we are, but we want to make sure that you have a smooth experience. When you go to Alaska, a lot of times you're adding some land, you're adding some flights. There are a little bit more complex issues when you're going to Alaska. You want to make sure you have all the proper paperwork. You want to make sure you are getting the most bang for your buck, and you're going to see the things that mean the most to you, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So in order to get the best deal and have your vacation be as smooth as humanly possible, we really advise that you book with a travel agent. It doesn't cost you a penny. As a matter of fact, you can email me at jp@bytesizecruises.com, and I can give you pricing for any of your Alaska trips. I will put together full packages for you with excursion ideas, full itineraries, and everything, and it doesn't cost you at all. So next tip, tip number three, be prepared for additional costs. Alaska, just like a lot of European Mediterranean cruises, maybe the fjords, some of these cruises get to be a little pricier because you want to go on more excursions, you're hitting more ports, and those excursions tend to be a little more expensive. Also, you're going to have airfare to contend with as you fly to these different areas. So be prepared. Generally, my rule of thumb is double the amount of your cost for hotel, flight, excursions, tipping, all of those things. You really want to plan accordingly. Remember, Alaska is a bucket list trip, so make it count. If you're going to do it one time, really make sure you're prepared and ready to go. Tip number four, pay attention to port times. You're going to be getting into the ports sometimes early, sometimes late. Before you book any excursions, what I like to do is generally create a little spreadsheet that has my arrival times in each of those ports so that you know when you're going to be there, you know when you're going to need to be back on the ship. Remember, if it says that you're leaving at 7, you really need to be back on the ship between 6 and 6:30. So keep all of those things in mind. Make sure you prepare for port times. Tip number 5, don't forget your passport. A lot of times when you're cruising in Alaska, it is not going to be a closed loop cruise. A closed loop cruise means that you're leaving out of the United States and you're returning to the United States. Sometimes for Alaska, you're going to leave out of Vancouver. Sometimes you're going to leave out of Seward or Whittier, Alaska, and you're going to end at the other port. So you need to make sure that you have a passport. For travel, I find that having a passport is essential anyway. If you have an opportunity to get a passport, right now they are running at a pretty good clip. You can get them back in 4 to 6 weeks. I highly recommend having a passport. Even if you do a closed loop cruise, you're going to wind up bringing your raised seal birth certificate and a driver's license, which is a little bit of a pain to carry that. You don't want to lose that, certainly. So grab a passport. Don't forget it. You're going to need this in your many, many adventures. Tip number 6, always arrive at least a day early. Weather can be unpredictable. Flights can be unpredictable. Most of the time we're flying a little bit of a distance to get to Alaska, to get to Vancouver, even to get to Seattle. Make sure you jump in a day early. At least, if not, really think about extending your cruise with a cruise tour, which means you add some type of land adventure to it as well. That way you are there ahead of time. I do recommend doing your land before your cruise. If you have a choice on whether or not to do that, I think it is a better experience. The land portion of your cruise tour tends to be a little more strenuous and exhausting. This way you get that out of the way and you can relax a little bit more on your cruise. You will get to see Denali National Park if you do a land portion. You will get to take the Alaska Railroad, which is amazingly beautiful. You have a glass-topped car that drives you basically through Denali National Park. It is amazing, and I highly, highly, highly recommend doing that. But again, make sure you get in at least a day early to avoid any confusion. There are a lot of time changes maybe. There are different things going on. You don't want to run into any delays and miss your cruise. Tip number 7, Alaska weather will certainly keep you on your toes. It could be warm, it could be cool, it could be rainy, it could be snowy. So what you really want to do is you want to pack for everything. Rain, sun, cold, and everything in between. Here's a pro tip, bring a blanket with you. If you bring a blanket, just tuck it into your luggage. It's going to be great if you are up on the deck and you want to watch the glaciers or anything. This way, you don't have to really overdress. You can have a blanket with you. You could throw it on as you sit out there, drink some coffee or hot chocolate, and really enjoy those views without freezing your butt off out there. Going hand in hand with that, tip number 8 for us is keep it casual. If you've ever cruised to the Caribbean or the Bahamas, you'll notice sometimes that they have formal nights on cruises. Sometimes people love to get dressed up, depending on the cruise line, depending on the day. They'll wear suits, dresses, these different types of things. I've noticed in my experience that on Alaska cruises, it's more of an expeditionary thing, and people really don't dress up as much. They've been out in ports all day, so in the evening, you're really kind of tired and exhausted. You don't want to get all fancied up. So my recommendation is to cut down on some of that packing because you're going to need to pack for all those different seasons. Keep it casual. Again, you want to be appropriate. I always say like business casual, jeans, pants, some type of polo or collared shirts for men. You could do some cocktail dresses, even pants and things for women to stay comfortable and keep it casual. Tip number 9 goes hand in hand with one we talked about in the beginning. Plan ahead and bring cash with you. So as much as you could do in advance, get it done. Plan your excursions, plan your dining, plan your activities, plan all those different things you want to do on the ship. It's going to take away a ton of stress for you. And then the second part is to bring a decent amount of cash for you. Remember, you're going to be getting off the ship a lot. You're going to have tips for drivers, for tour guides. Even on the ship, it's great to give tips in cash so that the crew feels rewarded for the hard work that they're doing. And you will be eating at the port along with other things. It's always nice to have some extra cash with you just so you don't have to rely on those credit cards, and especially while you're in port to give out those tips. Tip number 10, pack your patience and be ready for changes. Remember, you're going to Alaska. The weather can be wild. Sometimes you are going to skip ports. Sometimes you're going to go someplace different. Sometimes they're going to switch the ports around. Sometimes you're going to get in earlier or later. So there's going to have to be some changes on the fly. Please be prepared for that. Don't stress out. It happens all the time. Sometimes you're even going to have some flight delays going or coming again. That's why we talked about getting in early, making sure you stay flexible and keep your explorer spirit. We have a few more tips at this point. We'd love to ask you to subscribe to our channel. We put out a brand new video about cruising every single day. Come join us on this amazing cruise adventure. Tip number 11, a couple must-haves. Bring a camera. A lot of people now use their iPhones or their Androids to take pictures, and those work great. However, when you are in Alaska, it's going to be really nice to have a little bit more of a nicer camera. Whether you bring some binoculars, maybe if you just want to see things, or you want to bring a camera that has a nice zoom, maybe like a 200 millimeter zoom at least, so you can get some wildlife photos or some beautiful things from a little bit further away. You don't want to go up and get a selfie with a bear, so it'd be really nice to take a picture of that from a little bit further away. And again, you might see a whale breach, you might see any number of things, so you want to have a nice camera on you. And please bring a dry bag. Bring something where you can put your wet clothes, you can put things in there, even a little zippy for your phone or your camera to keep it covered and safe. Tip number 12, one of our last tips here, is eat and drink in port. I know it's really simple and cheaper to say, hey, I'm just gonna head back on the ship. I'm gonna grab dinner there. I've already paid for it. It's included in my cruise fare. Remember, you're in Alaska. These are some amazing towns. They have amazing seafood, great food, great drinks. Try some different things out there. So make sure you budget for eating a little bit in the ports as well. It's an amazing experience. And then last but not least, our last tip is, remember, there are some must-see ports. You can do several routes in Alaska if you take a cruise. You can go from Seattle to Seattle and you'll see some of the highlights. You can also do the passages where you're going to see more glaciers. You're going to get a little more inside of Alaska. So you really want to make sure you get Ketchikan, Skagway, Juneau, Dawes Glacier, Icy Strait Point, any of those things. Make sure they're on your itinerary. Remember to use a travel agent or call a travel advisor. They will really help you get things squared away so that you have all the best information that you could possibly use. We're going to be doing another video coming up soon on all the best things to do in Alaska from an excursion standpoint, from restaurants and beer and different things. So keep an eye out for that. These are our most essential tips to Alaska. I hope they help you plan the trip of your dreams. Again, it's a bucket list. We would love if you liked this video, if you found it helpful at all. Thanks so much again. Hope you have a wonderful day. We will see you all tomorrow. Happy cruising. Bye.